The way that Evo Car of the Year is written, you can put yourself in those cars, you can visualise what the drivers are going through, what they're feeling, what they're seeing.
This is it for us. This is, of everything we've driven during that year, which one is the best and which one represents the thrill of driving.
If you were going to show someone one feature from the entire year, this would be the one that best expresses what we're about.
There's a kind of celebratory atmosphere. You know, we've got all the amazing cars there, all of us hanging out together and having fun. Yeah, that's for me, that's what makes it special.
It's the same process every year, really. I think we all disappear on launches. We sometimes do group tests with the cars that are going to be featured, and it's just those cars that have something else, something special, that just represent what we love about cars. And that's really how it works. You drive something and you just know, you intrinsically know, this car has to be a car of the year. We've done this all over the place. We often go to Wales, we've been down to the south of France, we've been to Portugal, but we've never ventured as far north as this, right up to the north coast of Scotland. And I have to say, I'm not sure I've ever been anywhere more beautiful. I absolutely loved it. I was blown away by the location. We were unbelievably lucky with the weather, but yeah, I think as a combination of cars and location, this year's Ecoti was pretty much perfect. It was amazing.
The freedom of being in a sports car on some of the best roads you can possibly imagine, that's like the ultimate dream for everyone. And I suppose we're the lucky so-and-sos that are getting to do it for work, but it's whenever we come to do Car of the Year, those are the kinds of things that you hope to experience and the memories you hope to take away from it. I like to treat Car of the Year as not so much how the cars feel, although that's an element of it, but it's more how they make me feel and the things that I can reflect on each day after some great roads. And you've driven all the best cars of the year, and it's what lodges in my mind and what resonates with me isn't necessarily how it turns in, how much grip it's got or traction, or it's a much more human side of the test, I suppose.
So every year we try and put together the best team possible. We have to put together a team of people that can assess the car appropriately, can really dive into the dynamic positives and negatives about each car. And of course this year we have Marino Franchitti, who came with us on Car of the Year last year, he's a racing driver, but he's got a fantastic feel and eye for road cars. And what a pleasure it was to have our columnist Dario Franchitti to come along for a couple of days to spend some time with us. Brilliant to get his feedback as well. I mean, this is a guy who's got an F40 and a Carrera GT, so he knows fast road cars.
I was lucky enough to be writing the piece this year, which, well, first of all, I mean, that was just a dream come true. I grew up reading Evo Car of the Year, so to write one was so special for me. But it meant that I had to be on alert for the whole week. I had to have my little radar going, just listening to what people were saying, taking notes the whole time, taking recordings. And one of the important tasks was to draw parallels between different cars, the way people were describing them. And that's one of the nice things about Car of the Year, is that you find these common traits in very, very different cars.
I grew up reading lots of different Car of the Year tests. I remember reading the early Evo ones, and it just looked like something that anyone would want to do. And having now been on God knows how many, I can confirm it is something that anyone would want to do, because it's just the best week that you can have. Yeah, driving these cars on these roads, it doesn't really get much better, and we have a great laugh, but we also really, really want to get it right, and we do care about this stuff. It's quite geeky, but we do care about the feel, the balance, all those things that we write about. So to have those highlighted and really put in context by all the other cars is a fantastic way of really finding out what these cars are about and trying to impart that to people as well.
Evo Car of the Year was like Christmas for me. You know when it's going to be, you know you're going to pick up the magazine, and you know you're going to see the best cars of that year. And for me, it was people whose opinion I trusted were trying these cars out, were testing them in lots of different circumstances, and I always found it something that I would become completely lost in.
The special, really unique thing about Car of the Year is that we've got a massive mix of cars on test. Normally when we're doing a group test at any other time during the year, the cars are obviously quite similar, they're direct rivals. But on this test, we've got a massive variety, from a little £20,000 hot hatch to a Lamborghini Aventador that costs 15, 20 times the price. It makes it a proper challenge trying to assess these cars relative to one another, but that's just one of the skills that you have to have as a road tester.
I've got to say that one of the proudest moments on ECOT is just simply that first day when you see all the cars together. And of course, this year we did it, in the grounds of a castle, Alduri Castle on Loch Ness. Absolutely amazing experience. And of course, what do you get? Well, you see the shapes and colours. You start to see how the cars are going to pair off. You start to see how we're going to compare one to another. And all you want to do at that point is, just give the photographers a bit of a kick and say, come on, get on with your shot, because I want to go for a drive now. If I'm absolutely honest, most of us just stand around giggling, just going, can you believe this is actually happening? So if you're into cars, you just can't help yourself, can you, sometimes? So amazing experience to see the cars together for the first time.
From the first morning, I got to drive the 488. That was the first car I drove from the hotel to where we were basing ourselves that day, and it was just... Ferrari have redefined what the turbo engine is and what it is capable of, so that was a highlight straight away.
Yeah, absolutely, completely dominated by that wonderful engine, that wonderful V8 twin turbo engine. Ferrari, I don't know how they do it. They do it with normally aspirated engines, and now they've done it with turbocharged engines. It's a fine power plant, and what a machine.
The performance is ridiculous. I think that's probably the way to describe it. It's absolutely ridiculously fast on the road. But it does have a problem, and I think that problem, for me at least, is the 458 Speciale, which is lodged in my mind as one of the all-time great cars. And the 488 just couldn't recreate that for me. The engine gives you, in my opinion, more of what you can't use, which is the absolute outright performance. Yeah, it's almost an engineer's car rather than a driver's car in some respects. So, fantastic achievement, but I never got those goosebumps that you get with the best cars with the 488.
I think as a starting point for an all-new generation of mid-engine V8 Ferrari, this is fantastic, but the thought of a 488 Speciale or the equivalent of that is too tantalising to ignore, I think.
The Camaro was... I just didn't know what to expect. But I didn't expect what the car is capable of. It's so... I think I described it to my brother as it's not synthesized, it's pure. It may not have the best chassis, it may not have the best damping, but it's got an incredible engine. Everything works really well together, and you've got a massive amount of rubber on the road. And I think Nick and I were talking about it the first time that he drove it, and it described it really well, that you go into a corner and you think, yeah, a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, and the limit's very hard to find. But it's a real thrill, it's a real event every time that you drive that car.
It did get untied by the toughest roads on the test, but God, it was just so much fun, so much character. It's a proper challenge where some of the cars do a lot of the work for you. This one, you really, really need to raise your game. It was a lot of fun, and I just think it looks so cool on the road as well.
In reality, it's the most pure driving experience of all the cars here, which is saying something, because there's some incredible cars.
The Evora 400, well, it's Yeah, of course, it feels like a pure Lotus, the steering and the incredible chassis tuning. I mean, this car, there were roads that knocked bits off of the other cars, but the Lotus just took it all. The engine has no soul, no character. I mean, it sounds good, always sounds better from the outside than it does from the inside. But yeah, it's a very unusual car, the Evora. It's got brilliance in it, and arguably the best chassis here. But it was hard to ever feel like you were enjoying it. Strange thing to say, but yeah, it wasn't quite there this year.
I described it to someone, I feel really bad saying this, but it's like having a really great meal that you've taken away from the restaurant and you've reheated it and eaten it the next day. It's not the same. It's maybe 5 or 6 years ago, it would have been right up there, but there was just too many things that have moved ahead. And although the guys at Lotus still are the best chassis team out there, as a complete package, it just doesn't work for me. It's a real shame, because I really wanted to love it.
The actual driving experience is really, really high quality stuff. It's exactly what you know Lotus can do, and I think it would be easy to feel that they'd maybe forgotten how to do that because of the sort of negative press that the company's had as a whole. But this car is a really great reminder that there's some brilliant minds in that factory, and they can still, when they're given the opportunity, create a tremendous car.
The McLaren 675 obviously has a lot of hype around it, and it's completely justified. It's an incredible car. It's a great experience, and talking to everyone about driving that and what they'd felt, what they'd discovered about the car, and just every time you're driving it, unpeeling another layer of the experience was something else.
Ultimately, this is it now. This is McLaren setting out its stall for the next 10, 15 years or so. And if the cars to come are anything like this LT, then that's it. They're in the big league now. They've done it.
I think this car is absolutely brilliant. I love it to death. The power delivery is not a patch on the 488 at low revs, but the way it punches at the top end is so much more exciting. The chassis is aggressive, and some of that really supple feel of the 650S is gone, but God, I'll take that any day, because the increase in the level of feedback and excitement and adjustability and just the sense that you're really part of what's happening is massive. It's a massive step on from a 650S in that respect. It delivers a hit of adrenaline like nothing else here. I loved it.
This was McLaren's best shot, and Ferrari with 488, that was their new best shot, and I kept being drawn back to the McLaren. It had more character and more charisma, and just despite the flaws it still has, it emotionally it connected with me in a way that McLaren or new era McLarens have really struggled to do.
I've done 78 issues, I think, of Evo now, in around 6 years, and I think probably the best photography we've had in that period, if not in the entire history of Evo, was during EcoT this year. Extraordinary work. Now, of course, they were handed the scenery and they were handed the cars, but the sheer work and effort that goes in on photography and video and on the art direction side always knocks me out. And of course, this is important stuff, because photography, this is where you really feel like, you're inside a car. This is what's pulling you into the page. Do you know what? We've probably got thousands of images that are left over, that are sat on a server somewhere that we could use, and they're equally as good as those that have been published, which is a shame, I guess, in many ways. But boy, they outdid themselves this year on Car of the Year, and I feel very proud to work with them, to be honest. I think they're the best in the business, and I don't think you'll see automotive photography like it anywhere this year.
You might imagine in this company that the hot hatches would sort of become invisible, and the keys that no one wanted to grab whenever we move from one location to the next, but that isn't actually the case. Hot hatches, I don't know what it is about them, but they're just such a sweet spot that you always want to jump in them. And on the sort of roads that we visited, they just seem to fit everywhere. On the narrow Applecross Pass stuff, they're just perfect where some of the bigger cars couldn't even get up there. But even on the big roads, they came into their own. I really enjoyed them. The Honda is a real achievement, I think. They've come from nowhere to build that car. I have some issues with the engine not feeling quite as special as it should, and a bit of turbo lag. But it's an event. It's an event to be in, which is really quite hard to. It's quite a hard thing to recreate in a hot hatchback, but it does feel like an event. The Peugeot, it's amazing how focused that car feels and how hardcore it feels next to something like a Fiesta ST. But in this company, it felt a little soft, a little bit narrow. And of all the cars, I would say that was probably slightly overwhelmed by where we were and the company that it was in. The Seat, on the other hand, wasn't overwhelmed by anything. It's unbelievable, this Cupra Ultimate Sub 8. Silly name, but geez, what a car. I don't think anything could drive away from a Cupra Sub 8 on these roads, on those tyres. The grip and the composure. Every time I got in it, I was shocked, actually. I was shocked by how good it was. You just never seem to have to brake. The way it carries speed is something else. It would keep up with anything. It would keep up with anything.
The 208 GTI. Now this kind of represents pretty much the best small hot hatch we've driven this year, and it was brilliant to have it on Car of the Year this year. Being able to chase some of the quicker cars in this tiny little thing with it hopping and bouncing all over the place, and being able to lift off and have it sliding through the corners on three wheels. It's an absolute hoot. Deserved its place on Evo Car of the Year 2015 and provided some absolutely hilarious moments chasing the quicker cars.
The 2 generations ago, I really liked the Type R. I wasn't so keen on the last one, and this one is the class of the field. The only thing I would change in the Civic is to be able to have the R Plus, to be able to have the engine performance without the chassis becoming so stiff. Because again, the Scottish roads being bumpy and undulating, it struggles a little bit, becomes a little bit too stiff and bouncing around. Obviously the looks are Marmite. You're either going to love it or you're going to hate it. But when you're in it, you don't see that, and it's just the seat, the position, everything. They've done an incredible job.
Throughout the week, the photography and design teams were referring to the GT3 RS as the winner. I think they were just winding us journalists up, really. You can understand why. I mean, the 911 has clearly won Car of the Year several times in the past, and the RS is a firm Evo favourite. And I think it probably did go into the test as the favourite to win. People talk about that old Metzger engine. It was an amazing thing, but I just think, wind this thing out all the way to the red line from low revs. You get that bark from low revs, and then it just builds to this amazing crescendo. I personally didn't miss the Metzger engine at all. And then the rest of the car, incredible gear shift, amazing brakes. It looks cool. It really, really was an impressive car, and it deserved to go in as one of the favourites.
The steering we've criticised on the 991 is still not quite where a 997 is, but it's fantastic in the detail. The car just is shot through with this motorsport feeling, and that naturally means it's incredibly exciting. The engine is phenomenal. The noise, it's got this real gritty, organic feel to it. And it's still, despite the grip, despite this constant search for more grip, lower lap times, it's still got feel, it's still got adjustability, and it still feels like a 911. They've really got it right in terms of combining modern, super high performance grip and traction with this old school adjustability, this old school 911 sensation. A huge highlight, always a huge highlight, the GT3 RS, and this year no exception.
I had really, really high expectations of the AMG, and it just didn't come together for me. But it's an incredible motor. It's almost like a time machine. It takes me from one point to another, and I'm kind of don't remember how I got there. So it's very capable, it's lovely, it looks great, great engine, but I think that they've got a little bit of work to do to get it to where it can be. and it can be better, and I'm sure they will. I'm sure there'll be another version of that coming that really moves it on.
I mean, it's a fine car. It looks beautiful, attracted a lot of attention on the test. It's beautifully made. The engine is fabulous. But there's just a real disconnect, particularly on the steering, that creates a distance between you and the car. So I just couldn't, I struggled to bond with it. Other guys on the test were less critical. Other guys on the test were more critical. But for me, I just struggled to find the sports car in the AMG GT.
I still think it's a terrific car, and it is really, really exciting. The noise is just brilliant. Not perfect, slightly undone on some of the bumpier roads, but still a really, really great driver's car, and still one of the highlights for me of the year before this, and even into the test itself. I still enjoyed a lot of what this car does.
The Aventador Sv, I mean, it's just the definitive supercar of our time, I think. It looks like nothing else on the road. It's the most aggressive thing you can possibly imagine. It turns heads like nothing else. And then, of course, it's got that massive V12 engine. It's just such a classic supercar recipe.
I think, obviously, that V12 engine's incredible. It's a bit pitch sensitive for me. The guy who did the time round the Nürburgring is my hero, because I don't know how he was able to do that and brake heavily, and whether it's, I can't imagine that it has enough aero, but it feels like the aero centre of pressure moves to the front quite severely under braking when you really brake heavily. So what you have to do with it is take a step back and not brake so late and so heavily and just float through the corners a little bit more.
The experience you get in the Aventador, you cannot get anywhere else. You can't get it in a Ferrari, you can't get it in a Porsche. And the SV experience is undeniably thrilling. Frustrating at times as well, but absolutely thrilling. So, yeah, a real joy to drive.
Whilst I love the idea of that car and the extra intensity of it being an SV and the significance of that, if you're a student of Lamborghini heritage, that is the ultimate recipe for their flagship car. But I didn't enjoy driving it. The engine is spectacular, the styling is even more spectacular, but it never kind of all came together to give me a driving experience that felt as good as it should be, or as memorable for the right reasons. I think it's quite a disconnect between the anticipation of driving it, and then for me at least the reality of how it drove. I felt quite let down by
it. In the end, when all the scores were totted up, it was incredibly close, but the Cayman GT4 just pipped it, and I think all of us were really, really happy about that. We were worried that it was another Porsche, and yeah, okay, the usual conspiracies, but we love that it goes back to the manual gearbox. We love that it doesn't just care about Nürburgring lap times, about 0 to 62s, about launch control, all that stuff. It's about enjoyment, it's about involvement, it's about getting back to the basics of, I guess, what the thrill of driving is all about. And so for us, that car, if we had to pick any car that represents that absolutely perfectly in 2015, it's a no-brainer really. It is the Cayman GT4. It became a really close contest with the LT, but I think in the end it was the right decision. It fit. It is car of the year for all the right reasons.
It's no surprise at all that the Cayman GT4 won. I actually had it as my winner halfway through the week. I'd had some amazing drives in it, and I just thought nothing's going to get close to this. It's probably the sweet spot for performance cars in the UK at the moment. It has the right amount of power. It's the right size. You can use all the performance that it's got, and you can really work the chassis so hard. It steers beautifully. I mean, I know it's got an EPAS system, but they've done some kind of witchcraft over at Porsche because it steers beautifully, and it's got enormous grip, but you can really start leaning on it and just edge up to the point where the grip's starting to run out without driving like a complete maniac.
Porsche have some of the best engineers in the world. They understand how to make a great car, but I think the thing that separates this from the GT3 or McLaren or the Ferrari is they also understand drivers and what we want. And for this car, they've parked all the things that they focus on with their other super high performance cars, and they've done this car for us. That's how it feels. It's like, here you go, boys, we know you don't like paddles, we know you don't like this, but we know you love this, and that's what this car is, and that's why it's won Car of the Year. Simple.
Pinch yourself moments. Every time you came around the corner, you stopped to take a picture because you thought you're never going to see anything that beautiful again in your life, and then you come over another rise and go, yeah, I need to take another picture and another picture. It's driving along and seeing the clouds vortex over the top of the mountain was something I just don't think I'll ever forget. It was, you want to be able to download your brain to do the views justice. To discover your own country like that is makes me very proud, actually. Very, very proud to know that that's all there. And life is so busy, you don't get the chance to come and see these things sometimes, the things that are underneath your own nose. But I'm really happy that I've had the chance to come up and explore more of my own country.
You could go back there for 10 years and you'd never get the combination of weather and cars that we did. But I think more than that, it was the group of people that we had, and sharing those moments in those cars and just being able to indulge our obsessive kind of geeky car bore natures and talk about all these cars late into the night. That is something that is really unique, I think, about Car of the Year. The breadth of cars, the gathering of people, the location that we're in. It's just every ingredient is just the best you could possibly put together.
Car manufacturers themselves still covet the thrill of driving. You know, it's not just us. You know, Porsche would never have produced the Cayman GT4, you know, a manual, relatively simple performance car, if they didn't feel the same way we are. McLaren would never have produced an LT, you know, their version of an RS, if they didn't think that driving enjoyment is important. And you know what, you can apply that to every car that was in the list, and that's, I think, what I'm going to take from Evo Car of the Year 2015. The thrill of driving is still important, and we really do just want to put you in the driving seat of the most thrilling performance cars on the planet.
If you enjoyed Evo Car of the Year, please like or share the film and hit the subscribe button below to be the first to see the latest Evo videos.